We stand and have a moment of silence.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, thank you. Let's call a roll. Mr. Williams is absent. I am present. Mr. Heater.
Present.
Ms. Barnes Griffin. Mr. Irvin.
Present.
Mr. Lowell.
Present.
Mrs. Washburn. All right. Show that we are all in attendance. Operations Fund discussion.
Okay,
Mr. Jerome,
Thank you.
are you leading that discussion?
I'm going to lead that, and then Dr. Reynolds will help along the way too. So this basically all came about soon after we probably doing the part of the budget discussion, some of the permission to advertise for the budget, and some of the even perhaps a follow-up discussion on budget adoption or some other budget meetings, or just the normal financial report that we talk about each month. It was just the opportunity to come back to the board and perhaps do a deeper dive, deeper look into the operation fund and its companion fund, the rainy day, which we can't overlook that either, because that's one of the particular funds that has some of the challenges going forward. So that's what we've attempted to do with this presentation, and that's kind of your starting document right there, and that's not meant for you to try to look at that from many feet away. So you just have that as that's a projected financial statement of where we're kind of at in the operation fund. We'll refer to that perhaps some during the discussion, but we really wanted to show where we think we can go about over the next 5 years. 2028 is kind of that's a 5-year look ahead, if you will. Every year, for the benefit of the legislature and or Ball State or the strategic plan, ever since we have been governed by Ball State, we always have put together, along with an outside consultant, Baker Tilly, they help us with what's called a 5-year look ahead and a 5-year comprehensive financial plan. So every year we have done that, and that helps project our property taxes, and it takes a look at the tax cap or circuit breaker impact, and really those are kind of one and the same. If I say tax cap or circuit breaker, it means a reduction in property taxes. And trying to get past 2028, that is when our state loan is paid off, 2028. So that's why a 5-year look ahead is always good at seeing where we might be over the next 5 years. So what I want to do first, go to that slide right there is perfect. Looking at, when I start out by putting the 2021 and 2022 spending totals on the board first for 21 and 22, that's kind of the last years, if you will, where we really didn't start dipping into a rainy day fund to help offset operational spending. And that kind of shows, I wanted to kind of be able to show or illustrate that on any normal year, and it's not really changed the last few years since 2021 and 22, we still have, as a Muncie school district, about $13 million of spending for operational things in the district. And when we say operational items, I probably should back up and just remind you, operational items, which if you look at the little tiny spreadsheet there, those make up all those operational spending items. It's kind of anything, it's the employees in this particular administration building, like basically the administrators sitting around this table are included in operation fund. Plus you'll see utilities, you'll see facilities and maintenance costs, workers' comp, property and casualty insurance, security. Those make up the bulk of those spending items that make up the $13 million. And we'll have a pie chart. You'll see how that is in a moment. The other thing that I need to point out that disappeared after 2022, and we had it from 2018 through 2022 as a revenue source in operation fund that expired and went away. We had this thing called the transfer for the waiver for protected taxes. And we also had an item called incremental financing. Those expired for us, okay? In 2021, we had a revenue source of $3.2 million that we could deposit into the operation fund for the waiver for protected taxes. And that was to help offset some of the tax cap issues. The next year, 2022, the last year, was $2.6 million. Well, that revenue went away. Okay, so that helped us. That helped us for about 5 years leading up to about 2022, and that went away. So now, going forward in 2023 through 2024, and as you see and beyond, our only revenue that supports the operation fund really comes from our transfer of money from out of the education fund. We transfer it into operation. We're allowed to transfer up to 15% of that total revenue every year, and we get a portion of property taxes. That's the only really the two major revenue sources. We also deposit our interest income from our big bank balance, and that has helped because interest rates went higher. So that has helped. That's helped the last few years. So anyway, that's a special item to note. So we had a couple of those big revenue sources disappeared after 2022. And what I tried to show was what happened in 23 and what's happening in 24. We're still having to take money. We're still having to take money out of rainy day to help pay, if you will, operational items. And that's what I wanted to show there, is that's kind of what the plan still looked like. That's what happened, actual numbers in 23. And in 24, that appears what it's probably going to happen again, where we're very close to 13 million or a little over 13 million in 24. We had some special spending in 24 and 23 related to some spending for the YMCA as well. That was in those numbers. But what I've tried to do is at least show you some normal spending. Go ahead.
Could I ask you a quick question about this? So it says
Sure.
actual spending. It's actually actual spending through 23.
Correct.
You're forecasting 24, best guess.
You're absolutely
and really
correct.
25 and beyond is
That's
forecasted.
estimates, right.
So really, if I look at these numbers, your flat line is what you're showing. You're projecting flat line.
Absolutely.
revenue.
Yes, yes.
To match it. So you're matching expenditures.
Exactly right.
And so we're falling behind.
Well, and the other thing, and that was a good question that one of the board members had for me before the meeting, was tell us about the revenue projected going forward. I get that revenue number from my Baker Tilly consultants. They tell me this is what we think your tax caps are and what your property taxes are going to be for the next 5 years by year. So I use that as my starting point on my revenue, as well as what I think the impact of what the tax cap is. So I feel very comfortable with this is how I know what that revenue is going to be. And I list that at the top of that little spreadsheet page. So that's forcing me to make my spending match my revenue, okay? Really no more probably complicated than that. So that's kind of a quick picture of some actual spending and how it may look like in the future. And we can go to the next one, which that's just a bar chart that kind of shows operation fund spending by year again, and keeping in mind that, really you get to, on the far left, that's 2019. If you can't see it from there on the board, if you have it on your screen in front of you at your place, 13.8 million is on the far left. At the end of 22, that's about 12.6 million, because we actually were doing some reductions and trying to spend less in the operation fund. And then you see the big divide. Once 2023 gets here, you see a big drop. It dropped to 10.2 million in operation. And you're saying, well, why did that drop so much? Well, we couldn't spend as much in 23. We didn't get as much revenue in 23 on property taxes, because the flip side of the property tax item was we had a big balloon payment in debt service that the property taxes had to go for that to pay off those GO bonds. So that's why you saw a bigger drop. We were allowed to spend a little bit more money in 24 because we got more property tax revenue compared to the year before that we could allocate to operation fund. So anyway, that's just kind of the same look, just in a different format. And the next one you'll see is really the big pie chart that I prepared when we did our 2025 budget. And this, if you will, this is really probably the graph or the chart that really got myself thinking and got Dr. Chuck thinking about, well, what can we do going forward? If we know we're going to be challenged by spending in the operation fund, trying to look over the next 4 or 5 years, this helps show you in just a pie chart fashion, well, what includes the biggest amount of money that we can take a look at and try to impact spending. Some things you can't do much with, nor does it make much of an impact, but the biggest blue section there to take a look at is maintenance, custodial, and building. That pretty much represents, the bulk of that is the outside contract we have with for maintenance and facility and custodial services with SSC. That particular contract will expire next July 1st. And that represents, if you can see that, 32%. So that's almost 1/3 of your spending.
That's
Right.
not just labor, that's labor and materials. It's material they're supplying under the contract.
Right, and
There's a lot
they
of
bill us, they bill us at the, about 336,000 a month. It has escalator clauses in there that you can't rein that back in, okay? As of July 1 each year, it usually goes up whatever the cost of living is, because that's built into the contract. And that's about 190,000 this past July. And to take a step back, I remember coming to the school board in January of 2024, and the other punch in the gut, if you will, that we received was our property and casualty insurance, where I had to come to the board and say, hey, our property and casualty and workers' comp insurance increased by $320,000. Where does that get paid out of? It's paid out of the operation fund. Okay, so it doesn't matter how good you were in your other areas. If you were trying to cut back, we just had a big increase in property and casualty, which was related to hurricanes and whatnot, and whatever they wanted to use as the example because of it.
How much
So,
revenue they want to pick up?
I don't know. So in other words, we tried to do the best we can of curbing costs and putting things, allocating as much as we can in other funds, trying to be as conservative as you can, but at least we're left with what can we really impact in that operation fund. If we know over the next 5 years, and really if you don't even want to worry about 2028 or 27, what can you really do to impact the next 2 years? It gets really hard to impact 5 years out, but what we're trying to show you tonight was, and the whole thinking behind this, can we make it in the operation fund for Muncie schools for the next 5 years if we look at ourselves in the mirror and say, what can we do to control costs? What can we do, not waiting upon being helped by the state of Indiana, by any special rule or any special help for us? Or can we avoid having to do the dreaded referendum word? You know, can we avoid that? Could we actually make this go if we didn't get outside help? And this is what I'm trying to hope to portray tonight, that I think we can, okay?
Brad, what do these 10 categories look like trend-wise?
Okay, and what I'll probably do is I'll refer you back to the little numbers on that little spreadsheet. I know that. So what I'm just gonna, so I'll just summarize for you a little bit. Obviously, the big blue section there, your maintenance, facility, custodial, that has continued to creep up. Okay, it's continued to creep up based on really the cost of inflation, consumer price index that we have with SSC. That's how that's happened, okay? That continues to go up.
These are as a percentage of the total.
Oh, yeah, that's
Correct.
percentage of total spending. So that total spending there on the expected 2025 budget, that's 11.6 million. Okay, so it's continuing. It was going to continue to go up. So going forward, what I'm trying to do is make that go down, make the spending go down in some of those categories on that pie chart going forward.
So, utility costs have all increased across the board, across all of our buildings, transportation, it's kind of
Well, I
similar
guess
to
that's what I'm trying to
SSC.
get a picture of.
Sure.
It continues to increase.
Is, if the SSC contract is 32% of $11.6 million spend, what was it 2 years ago? And what are we projecting it to be 2 years from now
Right.
at the current rate? That's what I'm
Right.
kind of after. And because that ought to give us some, at least it ought to give us some direction on where we look
Well,
first, right? And I know you're doing that.
Right.
I'm not questioning that.
Right.
I just can't see it.
Well, I can tell you the dollars for SSC, maintenance, facility, and custodial, in terms of dollars, they were less. They were less 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, because it's continued to increase.
Materials.
Right.
Yep.
Everything's going up. So if you look at flat
Right.
line, even expenditure,
Right.
it just doesn't add up.
So that's why that was almost target number one to take a look at going forward, and I will, and we will, going forward with that. That's,
Eric and I have worked, started in about February, March, looking at our transportation lines. The next biggest piece, the burgundy
Yeah.
or
the red, the big,
big red piece there
Down
is
the bottom.
is transportation. So we've been looking at how we can do that. Can we be more efficient with routes? Can we reduce our midday routes? Can we turn things into shuttles instead of a dedicated route just to reduce costs? And we've seen some pretty decent decreases in that this year already.
So in no way are we reducing or proposing to reduce the service we're providing. Can you do it more efficiently?
Just more efficiently.
right. And so far, they've had a positive impact with that.
Yeah.
I mean, so far, in the first 2
2
years,
months, yeah.
first 2 months reported, that's been a positive thing there. Third big pie chart there, which I've not really addressed that yet, it's the green item, that's utilities. That just represents about 20% of spending, so that's a large amount. I know that's a low-hanging fruit as well. That would require some capital. That would require some capital spending there. And you're saying, well, gee, Brad, what would you do right off the top of your head? Real easy. You'd do a project to install LED lighting at everywhere you could, every fixture you could at Muncie Central High School.
Yeah.
Muncie Central High School, as you'd expect, biggest building, largest user of utilities. That's what's there. I mean, that's an idea. That's an idea. So those were the three biggest pieces of pie there. And I just wanted to set that as a foundation. That particular graph, like I said, we created that during the budget process this past July, or this past summer, probably presented it to the board back in August when we did our permission to advertise meeting. And you'll see some of those smaller slivers there for the rest of those items. Let's go ahead and go to the next one, Cindy.
Yeah, I got one
Yep.
quick question.
Go ahead.
Hopefully this is not talking out of turn or anything, but
No,
have we always contracted out our maintenance and custodial services?
It was, 2015 or 16, I think, as a cost-saving measure. We had gone to SSC. I think Eric and Dia were here at that time, but you were building leaders at that point. I don't necessarily know that you were involved in those conversations. So we'll talk about this in a second too, when we kind of talk about the road show that Dr. K and I did throughout the spring and summer, where we went and visited legislators and other like districts that are struggling with property tax caps and the operation fund like we are. When we met with legislators, those are the questions they asked. They said, hey, have you outsourced maintenance? Have you outsourced cafeteria? Have you outsourced nurses? All those answers were yes. I mean, we've tried all those things in an effort to reduce funds. The transportation, they really thought we were pretty innovative with that, partnering with the city and the city transportation to save funds. So while they appreciated that, they didn't necessarily say, oh, you've done everything you can. Let me see what we can't do to help you out. I mean, they're not ready to come up with that yet. But I think they appreciated our innovation to try to save money. Our nurses and partnering with Meridian especially, and then Open Door, those funds would also be coming out of operations too that we're saving. So I guess long story to say, we outsourced, I want to say it was 2015, 2016, somewhere around that time. I really think they've done a nice job for us so far, but just like transportation, we got to continue to go back and dig deeper and see what else we could do to save money. And yet, like you said, Jim, to still provide those essential services. I mean, you got to have clean buildings to go into and in good repair. So I think it was 15, 16, 17.
Everybody proposes that outsourcing is the solution to, at some point in time, it does come back. As, okay, we've gotten the low-hanging fruit, maybe it's time to look at it differently.
Right.
Some of it makes sense.
Yep.
Because, we want to be in the transportation business, we want to operate buses and so forth. But some of the other services, that makes sense.
Thank you. I just,
Yeah.
I mean,
That's a good question.
I was kind of thinking, where Jim just went a little bit. It's kind of like, we're in a position that I don't like to be in any kind of circumstance where we don't feel like we have any control over anything. It's just kind of like, we're waiting around to see who's going to increase this and who's going to decide how much this costs. We don't have much control. That doesn't feel real good.
Because the one thing we know, costs don't go down. They don't go down. They just don't. And yet we're trying to manage that in that particular fund with making it look like our spending is going down. Like Dave pointed out to me, it's like, yeah, I'm making it look like for all of you that we are spending less in the operation fund because I have to, because I have less revenue up above. And I can't put forth a budget that shows a negative fund balance in the operation fund. So I have to cut the spending on those line items. So that's what I have to do there. So anyway, I want to show you the next slide that just shows some bullet points of some things that we will be doing in various forms or fashion. Some we've already started, as Dr. Reynolds alluded to. We've already started doing some of these things anyway. Reduce spending. We're trying to look at that in all areas that we can in that operation fund. And there's many line items in there, but that's something that is an overriding concern. We want to make sure that we are trying to reduce spending on the operation fund. Letter B, look at the maintenance custodial. That was the big blue item on the blue pie chart, and I'll continue to look at that. If we are able to figure out better ways to do things or less costly ways of doing it, we will bring that to the board and propose that, because we have to spend less money in that particular fund. And if that involves taking a look at that item B, maintenance custodial contract fees, we will. The other item that I'm trying to respond to is item C, property and casualty insurance. That was such a tough blow to get a $320,000 increase in January that we really, I knew it was going to go up a little bit. I didn't expect it was going to double our property and casualty and workers' comp coverage. Okay? So we're trying to gather some additional quotes. I'll have more information for you in the coming months, but by the end of December. Okay? I can't totally predict that just yet because now we've had 2 hurricanes in the Florida and the Carolinas in the last month. So that's going to be a challenge. We'll see. I have some meetings coming up with our current folks later this week to start listening to what they think it's going to be. But I'm trying not to get myself painted. I'm trying not to have our district painted into a corner where we only receive one quote or multiple quotes from one agent. So we're trying to work on that too. We have to bring back some more options for the board.
One more question. Item I,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a proponent of ESCOs.
Mm-hmm.
We're eligible to do ESCOs, right?
Just tell me what you mean by that.
Energy savings.
Oh,
contract.
energy savings
They
contract.
pay the capital fund.
Yeah, I mean, I know we used to be 10, 15 years ago in school districts. I don't think that's been taken off the table. What that really means is you contract with it's called an energy savings contract. And it used to be Honeywell, Performance Services. There's a number of companies that did it. Yeah, Johnson Controls. Let's say they do a $10 million project. They come into your facilities. We're going to make improvements all across the board on energy. They pay for it, and then you have to make payments to them. I've not had to put that together here just because it depends on where you pay it from. And if I remember right, way back in the day, that used to be paid from capital project funds, which now capital project funds is called operation funds, which is right back to the same problem. It's right. It's a catch-22. That's right. But yeah.
And the challenge with that is they promise savings,
Yes.
but then your costs for utilities go up, and now you have no savings.
Yeah. And
Your cost of utilities go up. That's the conundrum.
we are doing some things. You know, we are in a natural gas. Let's see, we're with SEMA for natural gas. That's kind of a purchasing aggregated co-op kind of thing. So we're doing some little things like that. But to get those big bites of the apple, it does take some capital spending to do it. But any of those things that you suggest, we will try to pursue it. Not sure how timely any of the impact will be, but anything is worthwhile to pursue to spend less in that operation fund. Offset some spending in rainy day. Item D, we're doing that now. I've demonstrated that wholeheartedly that we're doing that. And Baker Tilly, who does our comprehensive financial plan each year, they always say, you know, that's not a good trend. You shouldn't keep doing that. And it's like, yes, we know. We know that we are spending out of rainy day. They know, hey, that's unsustainable. Yes, we know that. It's raining. That's right. So the only thing we've been trying to do is as much money as we can. And obviously at one point, probably 3 years ago, I had about, we had about almost 14 million in rainy day, and we've continued to spend it on a rainy day. That's what this has been. So as much surplus we can get out of our other funds, example being education fund, we try to continue to slide it over into rainy day at the end of this calendar year. So we'll continue to try to do that. So that's why that's called offset spending in rainy day. We'll continue to transfer the education fund. That's where you're allowed to transfer out of the education fund and the op fund up to 15% of your total revenue. So we keep doing that. Transfer some of your other costs to other funds. What that means is just any time you can take advantage of spending that, oh, can we take it against another fund? Then take it against another fund. Brad Jerome has some partial duties in food service, so we transfer some of that spending for myself, go against food service. That's a small thing, but that's what we do. Anytime we might have spending we can pay out of grants, we'll pay out of grants. So not a big thing, but those are the little things you have to do if you're trying to maintain a positive balance
right.
in that particular operation fund. Let's see. I guess E and G are about the same thing. Transfer of education funds into rainy day. We've already talked about that. Transferring into rainy day, I guess that's different from letter E. Letter H, selling bonds for school facility upgrades. That's an item that Baker Tilly, our financial consultants, have continued to talk to us about, selling bonds for short-term facility improvements. Well, we're kind of doing that right now. If you remember, we're doing it for projects. We're doing it for, we're paying it back in 1 year for the most recent bond projects we've had. So we'll continue to pursue that. And we know, as we sit here right now, we'll continue. We'll have to come to the school board for a 2025 project because we need to work on finishing the heating and cooling project at the Muncie Fieldhouse. So we know that's going to be front and center in a few months on planning for that particular project. So that's another example. In other words, the point would be, and this is where you sell bonds, which is debt, to pay for it in debt service and use the funds to do things that were operational, which is that a shell game? Well, that's what we have to do with the confines of the rules and requirements or whatever we have. That's something they have recommended for us. Item J, we've already talked about, review the district for utility cost projects and do anything else Baker Tilly might make some recommendations for. And that's kind of a brief summary of some of the bullet points that we wanted to take a look at.
Greg, question on the selling bonds for facilities.
Yep.
And then the utility cost prospects. Is there any potential of selling bonds for doing something that would actually generate marketable energy that would be profitable for the schools?
I'd say we would have to look into that. I mean, I think what you're probably referring to, let's say if you had an energy savings company and generated a solar field. Is that what you mean? Like a solar field or anything that might generate electricity or anything you could send back into the grid, so to speak. Would have to look at that.
By statute, you can't send back in.
Oh, is that right?
Has that loophole been closed?
It's been closed.
Okay. Okay.
Delaware County can install solar fields. They haven't created that ordinance.
You're working
Oh, okay.
They're still working on it.
Oh, okay.
Buy-ins.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Roofs just don't get you enough
Right.
capacity.
Sure.
Okay.
It might give you some capacity within the building, but to actually get enough capacity to generate large amounts, you need a large amount of acreage.
Okay.
You can't do it. Delaware County-
Well, there you go. Sitting right beside you, you had a resource. What I wanted to show you on the back half of our presentation tonight was our Baker Tilly financial consultants. I tried to grab some really, what I thought were some good graphs, some good items that perhaps talked about our fiscal review, talked about some of our items in our district, and that's what I wanted to show next. And this really lines up very closely with what's called the fiscal health indicators that the state of Indiana has created by statute, and all school districts are kind of judged by that in a way. And this probably came about because of school districts like Gary and Muncie to make sure that school districts aren't going off the rails. And that's really how they created, red light, green light, yellow light type of assessment here, just very quickly. What you have there in front of you, one of the first items on the top left, they kind of gave us a yellow light for ADM count. And really what they meant by that was it's not drastic, it's not growing. That's why they gave us a yellow light. It wasn't growing. If we were growing, it would have been a green light. The fund balances, they gave us a yellow there. That's the second item, number 2. And that's because the operation fund was going down, okay? Rainy day fund had been a good balance. That was going down. Operation fund going down. I mentioned that. Education fund's hanging right in there. That's a good one, okay? And that's why item number 3, it says surplus or deficit. We're kind of in the middle there because we are doing a surplus in the education fund, but we're burning cash through operation fund and rainy day. We know that. So that's why they gave us a yellow light there. Now 4, 5, and 6, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, they're all green lights. We're doing really well on those indicators, and that was a fund balance as percent of spending. As I'm always proud to tell you, each month when I do my financial report, we're sitting with 32 plus million in the bank. We have high fund balances, and therefore, when they look at our spending versus the cash we have on hand, that's considered we're doing really well. So that's an indicator that at least we have money in the bank, okay? Revenue by type, that was a green light because that's an indicator that we're getting, we might advocate and say, well, we didn't get all that tax cap money. That's 11 million that's not available for us. But they're saying that is, as you see the description of what those stoplights were, they consider that a solid foundation. So that's a strong thing to have solid revenue. Referendum revenue as a percent of total revenue. We don't have a referendum, so I don't. Maybe that's why they gave us a green light, because we haven't had to do that.
Right.
We haven't had to do that. I guess the last number 7, the last little stoplight, 7, 8, and 9 of the fiscal health indicator, the net assessed valuation of our Muncie Community School District has gone up. It went up another, 4 or 5% this last year. For 2025, it'll go up. That's considered a positive thing if your AV is going up. And like I talked with Dave a little bit there before, some of your AV could go up, but if it's all in a TIF district, tax increment financing district, you may not get all that revenue anyway, because there may not be any revenue that we're getting from any of the factories around us. And that's a very volatile subject sometimes. You want to have growth in your community, you want to have growth in your net AV, and they still consider that a positive thing to have increases.
But the increase in assessed value has only been over the last 3 years.
That's true. It's pretty flat. That's
It could go back.
That's right. And the sole red light up there on the board, number 9, is called circuit breaker losses, and we know that. That's because we lose approximately 50% of our property tax revenue goes against what's called the tax cap or the circuit breaker loss. And that's considered a concern. Well, it's like, well, thank you, Baker Tilly. I didn't know that. Well, yes, we do. We have known it's been a concern for a number of years. They have to point that out to us because it limits our revenue. And we know that, limits our property tax revenue. So anyway, that's
Can you explain the green light for tax rate?
green light for the tax. Oh, yeah, tax rate. I didn't mention that. The tax rate, that was number 8. It's not, because it's considered green, it's not going up drastically. We, as a school corporation, have been,
So it's a corporation,
Flat.
it's not the Delaware County tax rate.
well, yeah, they're looking at us. They're just looking at us.
We've held the line.
Because we can only control our tax rate with whatever the AV does. We've tried to be, you've heard the term tax neutral. When we bring a project to you and a project to the public to explain it, when we've had to do those bond projects at the Muncie Central football campus, football stadium, and all that, we've been tax neutral on those projects. So because of that, we're getting a green light for tax rate because we've not been an increase. Go ahead.
We could be going down a rabbit hole here, and I don't want to do that. But what you just said about bonds, based upon our tax rate today, it generates a certain amount of revenue to pay our debt service.
Right.
And as we retire debt, I think we're going to have to be careful that we don't not borrow, say this in the right way. I mean, it is going to be advantageous for us to continue to issue some debt that matches as closely as possible to the revenue that we can generate, because that's how we can change boilers out and improve efficiencies in lighting. And I mean, that's how we can get our capital funding to do that. I mean, is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement. And just like we have just we just sold bonds this week on the 6.1 million most recent project we
rate.
had. And that was successful, 3.67% interest for a 1-year payback. The Baker Tilly consultants have told us that with the increase in the net AV, the assessed valuation we just received, they expect our tax rate to go down for Muncie Schools 7 cents. Now, we'll see if that actually happens, but they're projecting it to go down, which is continuing to be a good thing. But like you just said, they've also pointed out to us we would still have some capacity, bond capacity, general obligation
I
bond
mean, we
capacity.
can't be
to issue
penny-wise and
debt.
pound foolish. I mean, we can't, you know, I mean, we don't want to increase taxes to our taxpayer, right? We don't want to increase our rate ever
Right.
if we don't have to. But the rate that's there, we need those funds to be able to do the things we need to do. And
Right.
so we can't be afraid to do that either. We got to make sure that bucket's filled up reasonably. I mean, you know, we don't want to spend money to spend money, but without having the money to be able to go out there and improve the buildings to reduce utility costs or to enhance the efficiency of, I mean, the buses that we finally got, or the bus. We just got one. Oh, we did get two. All right. Okay, great.
One came in over fall break.
I was on the highway this weekend and I saw one of those transit buses being pulled. I thought, I wonder if we got it. But anyway, I mean, it's going to cost us money to do those things, and we can't do it all through bonding. I understand that, but at any rate, I just think it's important that we acknowledge that.
You said earlier by 2028, 29, our debt service is.
Well, that state, the state debt will be done.
But
It'll
we're
be
not
done by
paying
end
that
of 28.
out of,
But it doesn't come out of debt service.
yeah.
But what the Baker Tilly folks are projecting, we'll see that in just a moment on some of these other graphs, they're projected our tax rate will fall because some of our debts are falling off. So that's where it said it's creating some capacity for us to do some of those short-term bond projects that may help us with operation fund. The next graph, it just shows, just from a very kind of big picture, you can see it's going down, all those bar charts. That's our enrollment trend. It says from 2006 through 2023. Obviously, it's continued to trend down. We see that. We know that. We just most recently reported just a little over 4,900, 4,908. That's why it's been kind of stable those last, 2021 through 2024, been pretty stable. They're just showing the trend. Baker Tilly likes always to point that out. Why do we talk about enrollment so much? Well, enrollment's the driver of your revenue that goes into your education fund, because the education fund doesn't get a dime of property taxes. It gets the state basic grant funding formula is based on enrollment. So but it's always good to judge the health of a district by, are you growing, are you staying the same, or are you losing students? So that's why they like to show that for us.
Question about enrollment, is that based on population figures? Does it take into account what we're doing at the elementary level to improve? In other words, will we see some growth through the pipeline with the improvements we've got at the elementary area? Will that grow as they progress on up?
Yeah, so those numbers are just reflective of K-12 kids.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
a moment in time. Each one of those is like your moment in time. That's September of each year.
The whole thing?
Yeah.
The whole thing.
Right.
So one of the conversations that we had with the legislators was about how are we going to grow enrollment and to keep those numbers up. And to your point, it's part of preschool. We want to get kids in not only provide a high quality preschool to prepare kids, but also to get them into our buildings and want to stay there.
Elementary becomes a feeder system for
Yes.
high school.
That's right.
But I think more so, if I understand your question, our elementaries are getting near capacity, right?
Yes.
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 The middle schools are not.
Right.
North Center.
Yeah, we could probably be a little more creative with Central as far as capacity. I mean, I think nearly every room is used. We could probably be a little more creative there. but our middle schools have capacity.
To grow our enrollment in the elementaries, you're gonna have to do more what we did at Longfellow.
With the temporary.
Temporary facilities, you're just gonna have to continue to add those, which is smart to do, just add when you need it.
Mhm.
So the growth, it's gonna start there.
Yeah.
We've always said that. Our growth is gonna come from K
The
up.
bottom up.
And it's gonna take some years to get there.
Yeah.
But our facilities are gonna have to grow with it,
Mhm.
because we don't have excess capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point. I mean, the enrollment is showing stability a little bit. It's not drastic drop off there, but that is what it is on the far right, about 4908. If you go to the next graph, it's also based about enrollment, and really what it talks about is if you look at the far right, that's the student transfer. And what that means is we've lost about 2,500 students go to the outside districts. So you have 2,500 students live in a Muncie school district. They go to the outlying school districts. That's really what that means. That's if they all showed up tomorrow, we don't necessarily have a place for them. Okay, this is not new, right?
Right.
This is not new. But the Baker Tilly folks always like to portray that and show that to us. That was not new for us. We have known that. It's just a function of what we have here at Muncie Community Schools. I'm not sure we continue to try to talk about and portray good programs we have going on in our buildings and continue to fight against that, but I myself don't know how to solve that myself.
That's right. You continue to do what we're doing. I mean, you continue to offer outstanding programs. You continue to tell our story. Some of those areas, you have 6 corporations that are surrounding you within minutes of a pretty typical urban challenge. When you have a Muncie or Anderson or a Kokomo or a Richmond, you have a seed in the middle of your urban, I call us urban fringe town, and 6 options all the way around us. So you continue to do what we're doing.
Yeah.
Provide the very best programming and opportunities for students, and slow those leaves.
It's interesting, that goes back to Jim's point too. If we reduce transfers at the elementary level, we've got to have a place to put them.
Right.
But I personally like the temporary because it shows growth to people that drive by, Westview, or people that drive by Longfellow, or wherever we've got those.
Mhm.
It's like, we are now growing.
Right.
We don't have space, but the question is, how can we, if we can attract them at the elementary level, we'll keep them.
Yes. Yep.
So,
The next, we'll keep going here. The next graph just shows our net AV per student among some of the other schools in Delaware County. We're not whining. It's just showing that we're the second one in the darker blue. That says $384.74. That's the net AV per student. So it's showing we have pretty good AV. That's what that's telling us here in Muncie Community Schools. That shows a big number. So we feel pretty good about that big number.
Right.
And then we'll go to the next page and we'll look at the circuit breaker loss, and we won't feel as good.
So these are the
But,
charts that Dr. K and I continue to share with legislators and like districts to tell that story.
Yeah, that chart, the chart we have on the wall there, that's us, that's Muncie on the far left. That shows how much our circuit breaker loss. If you want to know in terms of percentage, we're losing 48% of our levy goes to the tax cap circuit breaker. So if we're supposed to get 22 million in property taxes, we collect about 10.8, just under 11 million. That's why that represents such a large number. And you can see our surrounding neighbors don't have near that impact at all. And that's just a function of what we have. The next graph just continues to show those things in a different way. It just shows your revenue per student for schools within Delaware County. Muncie's the third one, right there, kind of in the middle. It has the lowest green level there. The green represented property taxes for operations, okay? And that's what we've been talking about here. The amount of property taxes that funds operations, we have pretty much the smallest compared to all our other districts. I mean, that's our districts around us. That's your big takeaway there. They layer on the state basic grant on top of it so you can see other revenue.
So you see the blue is the state basic grant and our
Yep.
complexity index, just because of our demographics.
Right.
That's why that's a little larger than the
Right.
other school districts.
Well, that's right, yeah, because it's kind of a mashup of I mean, I don't normally think that way, but the Baker Tilly folks did. They mashed up operation fund property taxes along with the state basic grant
Yep.
revenue to portray it in that particular fashion, to show that we do get, as Chuck said, a higher revenue piece for state basic grant, but not much at all in operations, so. Flipping over the net AV projections, they're trying to predict the future for us. Projecting the future can be difficult. Those last three columns out there represent 2025, 26, and 27. And the Baker Tilly folks were showing about a 1% growth in 25, 1.75% growth, about 1% in 27. So they were, to Dave's point, or whoever had made the point earlier, they're projecting some modest growth in the AV for our district. And I know they, as they're down on the bottom of that particular graph, if you can read it, they do source this data. They get data from the Delaware County Auditor's Office, and they also work with the Policy Analytics Group to help give them as good a numbers as they can per property. The next graph, as we're trying to utilize our time here, the next graph shows circuit breaker losses, and that's what we've kind of talked about, being around 49 or 50%. And this graph starts clear back in 2008, and that's kind of when circuit breaker losses were invented. That's the origin story there. And you can see where it continues to go on the far right is those last four columns projected, 25, 26, 27, 28, still projecting losses of about 50%. And you can see it's kind of the shaded amount continues to grow. It shows our levy growing to over, 25 million on the far right, but you're really only receiving the net levy after the circuit breaker is just still not even probably $13 million even in 2028. So very modest growth because of the property tax cap. So I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying this is a fact. This is why we're dealing with this in the operation fund. Next graph, and we're almost done with charts and graphs. Historical and projected tax rates. It just shows where we're at here in Muncie. What's your big takeaway? Right in the middle is 2025, and that shows a projected tax rate. And this was before the Baker Tilly folks knew what our actual AV was going to be, and they were trying to project our debt service was going to go down. I think they actually told me yesterday it was going to go down 7 cents. Here they showed it going down only 2 cents. But look in 26, 27, and 28, you can see the property taxes, they expect it to really, really fall. As you can see, the total tax rate right around $1.20 in 2024, 2023. They're showing it really dropping in 26, 27, and 28, which I know speaks a little bit to what Dave had pointed out. All of a sudden, you pay off a lot of debt. Your AV goes up. You've paid off a bunch of debt. What should we do? Well, we have an opportunity for some short-term projects. I'm not going to say you're going to fill in all that tax rate. You won't. But it's saying you probably could afford some projects if that's what our consultants would recommend to us, because we're going to still need to do projects here in Muncie Community Schools related to facilities. We've talked about finishing the heating and cooling project to replace the boiler, which we will do on a permanent basis. We'll have to come back to the board in 25. And we have some other improvement projects always ready to go too. North side, I mean, there's a lot of items even in other buildings too. One of the last charts they give us, what they call their strengths, their SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. we've talked some about these already. We have very strong, they call the net assessed valuation growth. We have a lot of expiring debt. They consider that a strength. They're considering enrollment relatively stable. They said it that way. Legal settlement was increasing. That just talks about where they thought the population. And we have high net assessed valuation per student compared to the county. Now, the second thing, the weaknesses, we've talked about that. Circuit breaker losses, obviously the transfers of people out, and, oh, we're spending down rainy day fund. Yes, we know. Opportunities, explore budget levers. I think that's really what I put together on that list of bullet points, was we got to do some things ourselves to control spending in a variety of ways. That's what they call their budget levers or budget enhancement opportunities. Align your budget with strategic plan. Well, that's what we're trying to do here. That's what we're trying to do here, to look at the operation fund, threats, unfunded mandates, legislative actions, the economy. Those are very much unquantifiable. We don't know what the legislature will do on future bond projects or future rules. We're not sure. And I think one of the last, we're getting down to the end on the PowerPoint there, but the budget challenges, we've already talked about some of those. Life after ESSER, the funding formula. We've handled life after ESSER. We weren't heavy on paying for people out of the ESSER funds. They're just always wanting us to be aware of enrollment changes, special population funding. The 62% rule, that's where your total teacher wages and total teacher compensation of total teacher wages, total teacher benefits, as divided by state basic grant must equal 62%. We got our number yesterday for the fiscal year 2024, and we were well above that. We were at 72%, so we were not on the naughty list with the state, so we don't have to do an action plan. We don't have to do an action plan there. So this is really just explaining some things we've really already talked about in different form or fashion. The last chart, the budget action plan, what do we do going forward? Increase revenue. Please, Eric and Dr. Reynolds, please increase the ADM growth. Leverage the higher interest rates. Well, what we're doing there, that's called interest income. We are doing that. We are earning as much interest as we have in many years. Oh, decrease spending. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to be aware of, the big box in the middle, make sure our staffing lines up with the enrollment. Review any projected spending in those certain object codes. That's why we've explained certain things. Implement any budget levers, leverage debt fund. We're doing that. We are doing those things. So that's the brief presentation, which took about an hour. But anyway,
Brad gives us a bi-weekly update at our board meetings, and where he runs through that in a matter of 10 or 15 minutes. And I think this gives just a little bit of a microscope into one of those pieces that he always looks at. So Brad makes it look very easy and simple and uncomplicated, but as you see, it's not. Brad does a wonderful job. So Brad, thank you. That was outstanding.
Thank you. It's great. Thank you. You really don't get a big break time now in between.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Okay, no public comments that anybody signed up for that I know of. Need a motion to adjourn unless there are other questions, other comments?
Just a quick one, I'll follow up. We're going to continue to think about opportunities.
Yes, we will continue to work on this. Yes.
Yeah, do updates. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's not just a update. It's
Yeah, you can count on
the
it.
action plan.
Yep.
Yeah.
This might be a really ignorant question, but the 15%, is that a legislative figure?
Yes, yeah. Because if you end up transferring more than 15%, then you go on a list and you have to explain why and what are you going to do not to spend over 15%. We've always been below. You have to go right up to 15%, but don't go over. but it's per the legislature.
It's pretty typical too, right, Brad, that folks, most districts do that.
So you need a motion.
Motion to adjourn, yeah.
I'll make that.
Moved in second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And adjourns.
You didn't miss the meeting. We had a work session ahead of time. The Central kids are like, oh.
We'll see you next time.
Wait a second. That was the sweetest extra points I could have earned,
Sweetest
right?
extra 1 minute meeting
Yeah,
ever
showed
had.
up and they adjourned.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. You got time.
I think it's okay to give us at least 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then you go the other way. Remember that. Holidays going on.
I think we'll be done by 6:30, but if not, I've got to head to the door. There's an image show tonight. What do you think? Gonna be good?
Oh, it's
Is
gonna
it
be good.
gonna be good? Good, good.
I've still been
It's called
debating if I have
Hadestown.
time to get tickets.
It's a musical, but I don't know what the theme is about the Hadestown. Is it about a theoretic town, or
Um,
is there a story?
There's a-
It's, okay, okay.
it's not like that. The music's amazing,
Oh, good.
in my opinion.
Yeah. So it was, and Keith is really good about cranking it, man. He puts the pedal to the metal.
No fluff.
No fluff.
Good job.
Thanks for the thumbs
Oh,
up.
there you go, bro.
Oh, okay.
I know, we had class last night, we did a
Well, I agree. You were going through a P, or you were going through a PowerPoint as opposed to a PDF.
That's
A lot
all?
easier.
That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's clumsy. Yeah.
Can't do it all, right?
You do it all.
We good? Let's call our meeting to order. We'll stand for a moment of silence. Join us for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Mr. Williams is absent tonight. I am present. Mr. Heater,
Present?
Mrs. Barnes Griffin, Mr. Irvin,
Present.
Mr. Lowe,
Present.
Mrs. Washburn. All right. Thank you so much. Dr. Reynolds.
All right, thank you. I know we've had an hour meeting already, but so I'll try to be quick. But a few things going on I want to share with folks. We have our strategic plan report that has that's gone out over the weekend to our key stakeholders, foundation, legislators, President Mearns, Commission for Higher Education, DUAB, the governor, state superintendent of public instruction. And this afternoon, I sent it out to all of our staff members. Andy and Cynthia got it posted on our website for folks to access. That's our strategic plan report is an update on how we're doing, how we're measuring what we're doing. One of those requirements from House Bill 1315 is that we would do that every year, and by October 30th, have that submitted to those key stakeholders. Typically happens, provide some feedback, go down, have some meetings to discuss in detail any additional comments they have. But again, I think a few have skimmed through and sent some emails back, thanking, appreciating the work, and looking forward to great things to come. So it was a great start, and one of those things that feels good to check off. It's about a 6-month journey to start to collect data, to compile it, and write the narratives that support that report. So it can be found on our website under the About Us tab and under Strategic Direction. Or if you do like I do, you just hit the magnifying glass and search, and you can find it pretty quickly. Andy coordinated again our quarterly report. Our quarterly newsletter went out last week. That was one of the things that we heard on our family engagement assessment that we did with George and Francis Ball and the Scholastic. One of those pieces of improving community and family engagement by just doing some outreach to communicate what's going on in the district and how folks can get involved and share successes or vital information. So Andy, I thank him and all those that collaborated to put out good information on our newsletter. I'd like to recognize Evan Schroyer. Evan Schroyer, their principal at EWA, was recognized by Ivy Tech, Muncie, and Henry County as an outstanding alumni for that campus this year. You've met Evan, and he just does a tremendous job. So a wonderful accolade for one of our fine leaders. I guess maybe a little lighter. Our football team picked up a win on Friday, and that was terrific to see. Our kids got to celebrate a wonderful victory. They head into sectionals this weekend, or this Friday. They travel to Logansport. I believe it's a 7:00 game, but they travel to Logansport, who's pretty good. I think they were 7-1 heading into Friday. They're having a good year. Usually that'd be a good one to have on your schedule, but they're having a really terrific year. So we'll have to keep a close eye on that one. Most of our other folks, I see some of our athletes out there in our audience tonight. Most of our other folks have wrapped up their sectional play and are heading into their winter sports seasons. I do want to give a shout out to our boys and girls cross country team. Our girls, who I would say is having a rebuilding year, losing a college athlete who is now a college athlete off the team. Last year, they finished 6th at sectionals, and they take the top 5, advance to regionals. Oh man, those kids! It was so exciting to come through, and my son runs cross country, so I usually hit those events to see those girls come through, and I'm thinking, boy, they're pretty darn quick today. It was a great day for them. Lots of personal records for them, and it showed. One position out of making it to regionals. However, 3 of them, the top 3 runners, qualified as individuals to get to go on. So we'll have 3 students, 3 female students head on to regionals, and the boys cross country team, they did a really nice job. Had lots of PRs. They placed 4th, so they'll move on as a team to go to regionals on Saturday, and 1 point from 3rd place. They were really close. They were seeded 4th going in, so really just had a tremendous Saturday, and want to celebrate those kids for that accomplishment. And as other extracurriculars and co-curricular activities, 'tis the season, I think. At the end of the 9 weeks, folks will begin to have their concerts. They've had 9 weeks to rehearse, so I got to check out the combined middle school choir concerts. Was that last week? Last week, packed house. It was packed, and it was awesome. Those programs are growing and doing some really tremendous work, and it showed that they put on a wonderful performance, and the house was packed. Band concerts are kicking up. They had middle school band, I think, this last week at Northside, and then the high school, I think, has a concert next week, their Halloween concert, which is a fun, light concert to check out. And then drama and the art shows all those are starting to take place. The art show, the art teachers want to try something a little different this year and be a part of the Thursday art walk. So they're putting together Thursday art displays on the first of the month. I don't know I think they might take December off maybe November, December to prepare for the community sing. But again, a great time of year to go out and celebrate some of our students.
Great, excellent. Great news. I understand we don't have any signed up for public comments. Moving on to the consent agenda. I just wanted to, in general, make a comment on some of the donations that have come in for the Panther Pantry. A significant amount there. And so thank you to all of those who contributed to that. It's a great thing. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
It's moved and seconded. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. Motion carries. Moving on to the financial report. Mr. Derone
Okay.
is on again.
I know you want to talk about finances again. This just represents the snapshot for the month of September, and we're happy to report we did receive our state basic grant. We did receive $3.9 million in the month. The 12-month estimate's a little over $47 million, and that could go up or down based on our actual enrollment, which is now reported as 4,908. So we were down slightly from last year in October. We were down 43 students from a year ago in October. So that may have impacted the state revenue estimate perhaps by the end of December. We won't know that for sure until about probably the next month revenue report. We had I'll just go to the next page, no major debt payments in the month of September. Our major debt payments are in the month of June and December. Our actual cash balance for the whole total checkbook was just a little over $29 million at the end of September. Of course, we're still on track to be a little over $30 million at the end of this calendar year in December. And just a side note, we did sell bonds this past week, $6.1 million. That's to finance our current project that's getting ready to kick off in the spring at the parking lot of the field house, the south restroom of the football stadium, some underground water line, and a little bit of work for the field house as well. That's done as a general obligation bond. That'll be put on our books, so you'll see an influx of about almost $6 million on our checkbook balance. That'll close in the middle of November. So just a side note there, we are continuing to pay back our the state loan. That's down to $8.4 million. We'll receive property taxes in December. Good chart and graph there. That continues to show our trend of our cash balance, and that shows our the red is, of course, the state loan that we pay back out of the state basic grant each month. That does not come out of debt service. The next graph just shows the net of what would cash look like if we didn't have the state loan. I just like to show the trend. Obviously, it's trended upwards, and that's a good thing. The next item, I'm just showing our appropriations, and the little box in yellow, as we have on the agenda later, in a couple spots here on the agenda, we will ask the board for an additional appropriation for the fourth quarter on spending. We'll ask for additional appropriations in the rainy day fund of about $400,000, as well as in the education fund of about $2.6 million, and that's just to give us the authority to spend. I'm not increasing taxes. I'm not increasing the tax rate. I'm not increasing the tax levy. I'm just literally just giving myself protection to have the authority to spend in those latter couple months of the calendar year. When we get ready to close the books at the end of December, those first weeks in January, I want to make sure I have the right authority to spend that money, and that's what we've been projecting for a number of months, and that was part of our budget process. And that really pretty much, we're pretty much showing still expecting to have a little over $600,000 surplus in the education fund by the end of this calendar year. And that pretty much concludes my monthly report for the month of September.
Thanks, Brad. I think we need to approve the financial report.
Move approval.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Administrator compensation.
All right. You take that?
Want me to take that?
No, I can do it.
Go ahead.
All right. So the Compensation Committee met last week to discuss compensation for the administrators. We've traditionally held administrator compensation until after ADM count has come in to make a determination on budgeting and raises at that point. Attached is the recommendation, much like the teacher compensation model, it's based on their rating system, highly effective and effective. You'll see also contracts for Mr. Jerome and Dr. Bell. We've found that their contracts had expired and need to renew those, and we thought we would just do it at this time. You will also see that their compensation is based prior to the raises. So the compensation that are on those contracts will be adjusted to reflect the raises that would be approved today if you approve those. So right around a 2% raise, very similar to what we did for teachers and support staff.
Okay, great. Questions?
I would just want to add, part of what we looked at was the budget itself. Part of what we looked at was make sure that those rates of pay are competitive, and they are balanced with the increases that were granted to the rest of the corporation.
Great. Do we have a motion?
Motion approved.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Medical insurance renewal.
Thank you. Present to you tonight in the board packet our permission to approve our employee medical insurance premiums and our carrier for 2025. Very much happy to report we're not recommending any increase at all in the medical insurance premiums for medical, dental, or vision. In this particular week in the Wall Street Journal, which I have here, it talked about overall medical insurance for entities this past year has gone up 7% for employees, and it was 7% the year before. So we've not had an increase on our medical insurance for employees for 2 years. So we're certainly happy to report that. Anthem will remain our current carrier. A big shout out to our insurance consultants of Brown & Brown, Nick Naper and Richard Sutton, helped us with that process again. So in a time when a lot of districts around us are having that increases, we're happy to report we don't have to increase medical insurance premiums. So we are going to remain a self-funded insurance plan. Our self-insurance fund balance was a little over $3.3 million at the end of the month previously. Our employees are still able to use the medical clinic free of charge, as has in the past. And for those employees who participate in Plan A or Plan B, Plan A, you'll still receive $1,000 for single, $2,000 for single plus one, $2,000 for family on the HRA, and the same amounts of money there for the HSA, $1,000 for single, $2,000 for single plus one, $2,000 for family. So we've kept things the same as the year before in terms of what we provide for their HRA or HSA monies. And so really just happy to bring that and not have to take an increase. So just looking for the board to approve that particular renewal with Anthem.
I just wanted to ask you, Brad, what is and/or what are the contributing factors to the fact that we were able to maintain our levels compared to other districts?
We've benefited in a strange kind of way where we have a very young, inexperienced, if you will, teacher base. 50% of our employees are 5 years or less, which usually equates to their age as well. 20% of our teachers have 20-plus years of experience. That translates into less medical claims, and that's what we're experiencing the last 2 years. So I don't want to jinx myself by you asking that, but claims and expenses drive the premium. So we have been blessed the last 2 years. So, and we switched carriers. We were just finishing up our first year. We switched to Anthem, but we've always used the health clinic. This is a number of years we've used a health clinic. The health clinic changed locations, but and that our employees who participate in the health plan, they're not charged to go there. So that's a good thing for them, and they don't have to hit their deductibles when they can go for free. So we've had a good combination of events, a younger client base of our employees, and lower claims and expenses.
Excellent. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Additional appropriation, as you discussed.
Okay. One more thing. One more.
Sorry, Brad.
Presented in your board packet tonight is the permission to advertise for an additional appropriation hearing. We'll have this particular hearing at our November board meeting. We're asking to advertise for this additional appropriation, $400,000 for the rainy day fund and $2.6 million for the education fund. These funds are available in the rainy day fund and the education fund. This request for the additional appropriations will not increase our tax rate in '24 or 2025. These funds will come from this year's cash balance on hand. These appropriations, if not used, can be rolled over and carried over into the next year, and does not require us to spend all of these appropriations if not needed in the fourth quarter. This simply allows me and us, the school district, to have the authority to spend in the fourth quarter and not go over our approved spending by fund. So that's what I'm asking the board permission for, this additional appropriation hearing that we'll have at the November board meeting.
Wonderful. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. You know, I always expect when Brad gets done, you know, to hear. "Da, da, 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 da."
That's the IU fight song? Is that what that is? I don't know if I'd choose that one.
That's the most central. All right, any dialogue or anything from the board? Anybody else? Any of our students want to say anything tonight? Yes, no?
Wait, when they said you ended up some of your sports, you going into your winter sports, so like what sport? But you two swim? Yeah. Look at Mr. Ward like,
Right.
"Ooh." Thank you. So government? Yes. Snyder? Yeah. How much extra credit is it? It's required. Oh. Congratulations for you.
That means a lot of credit.
All right. Any media questions? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved in second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, we are adjourned.
Good job.
Very smooth.
Yeah, I'll be back.